Good morning, guys. Hope you're doing well. Today I want to talk about some keys to becoming a happier human. The first key, I think, is self-awareness. I think in understanding who you are, what things make you happy, and having an understanding of what your values are, and living within those values, comes a lot of happiness. So, when it comes to listing off the things that make you happy, it might be valuable to actually write down a physical list of, say, being with family, being with friends, playing a sport, playing board games, playing video games, watching movies, and just having an actual list. And the next part of that is then, reviewing and analyzing your weekly schedule and implementing more of those activities if you feel like they're not being, incorporated enough. So, how do I see friends more often, or how do I watch more movies, or how do I incorporate playing basketball more? The second part that I talk about, with the values, I think, again, coming up with a list is helpful. For example, you might write, trying to create, positive change, having some purpose within my life. Those might be on your list, and obviously you can come up with more. And then again, it's evaluating, are the things you've listed, are those values being implemented into your life? Are you, does your job fit in within your values? Does the time you spend outside of your job fit in with your values? And you will have to maybe reflect and say, I need to limit certain things or stop, altogether doing certain things to really live within my values. And for me, I think when we live outside of our values, I think we then can become really unhappy. The second key that I would say, which kind of falls in line with number one, is living regret-free. I think so much of what affects a person's happiness is regret. That feeling of not doing things as you wanted them to do, as you wanted them to be done, or doing things that weren't authentically aligned to you. And in this case, I think it's just important to live life on your own terms. Don't, do things, for other people or for family. Do things because it's what you want to do. I think doing things out of guilt or for others can lead to resentment, which can lead to unhappiness. And I think when you're living on your own terms, there's nothing else more that you can ask for. And I think that being said, living on your own terms might be tough. And that's, a battle you'll have to face, and, you have to debate what's important to you and understand, we all have only one life, and, certain family members or friends might disagree with the choices you make, and you have to stay strong in that. The third thing that I would say, that I think is really key to day-to-day happiness is having real perspective of where you fit within the 8 billion people in the world. Understanding, having a real understanding of the blessings you have. Not in a way to make you feel guilty, but in a way to just understand, all the good things that have happened for you. For example, some people estimate, there's 2 billion people that don't have access to clean water. There are figures as high as 3.6 billion people don't have access to adequate sanitation services. It's one of those things that sometimes when you've been blessed with a good life, you have a roof over your head, you have clean water, you have adequate sanitation, you have food. You don't realize what a blessing that is, but you're already doing maybe better than 2 billion people in the world just based off of that, and having perspective of that, and and it comes in many different things of even your relationships, like I know friends of mine who have lost their parents to cancer, and to understand that you've been blessed, however long that you have a relationship with a parent, and they're healthy, and that's a blessing. That's a real blessing, where others wish they would do anything to have their parent in their life again. If you live in a democracy, understanding that there's millions of people that live in under dictatorships, and then the overall quote unquote richness of your society, of compare, maybe visit a third world country and see how they're living versus where you're living in the United States or whatever. I think that perspective, when you can really develop that perspective of knowing how bad it can be, and understanding where you are and appreciating that, I think that's a real mindset shift. The fourth thing I think that I would talk about is not comparing your life with others. I think this is obviously very difficult, but I think comparison is the quickest way to unhappiness. The best thing, in my opinion, is to focus on yourself, to really look in the mirror and always be comparing, or if you are going to compare, look at your life today compared to where it was 6 months ago, 12 months ago, and, overall, how is it going? Maybe certain aspects are up and certain aspects are down, but overall, if it's in a positive trend, that's all you can ask for. That's progress, and that's what you want. And even a side note, going back to the previous point, people never compare themselves to people doing worse than them, right? They're never comparing themselves to the person that's homeless or the person that doesn't have access to food. They're only comparing themselves to the billionaire or the millionaire. And I think, for me, we're all given different cards in life, and that's why the best thing to always do is just focus on yourself and what your life was 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 year ago, and compare it to today. I think there's also an aspect, and maybe this is for a lesser population, But there's also an aspect um, of not taking life too seriously. I think that we've gotten to a point where we're so introspective as a society, and there's a certain aspect of life where you just have to accept what's in your control and what's out of your control, and to just enjoy each day as you can. Live in the simplicity of today, you know, and not be overcritical about overanalyzing every little aspect of your life. I think the overanalysis can lead to unhappiness. I remember reading an author once saying, the carefree person, has a much better life than the introspective person, because the carefree person doesn't have all these thoughts in their head and questioning everything. And I think there's a certain truth to that, that there's a certain amount, you need to be happy-go-lucky and, stop trying to control everything, and just, look at all the blessings and just enjoy your days, and, however much you can, and again, like, I have empathy for understanding that all circumstances aren't easy. But whatever's in your control, like, a lot of people complain about their jobs, and, there's a certain amount that's in your control, and there's a certain amount that's not. But if you say you are, not enjoying your job, like, what are you doing in the time outside of your job to make sure you're doing things that are joyful, that aspect. I think one other thing that's interesting, especially with people that have grown up in the social media generation, is I think it's key to understand about life that adversity is a part of it. I think with the social media generation, we're only exposed to positivity, and so that's why we think that life will always be peaches and rose. And I think that is something that's really harmful, to understand that everybody goes through tough times and goes through adversity, and for example, like, not everyone's gonna like you, and I think, sometimes with people pleasing behaviors and things like that, people get, offended, or that affects them a lot. Understand sometimes in those situations, the other person might be having a bad day, or is just genuinely an unhappy person. Like, your happiness affects them to their core, because they're not happy, and so that's why they are more negative towards you and things of that nature. And again, some of it might just be certain people don't necessarily get along, and that's the way the world works. Friendships evolve, friend groups change, breakups happen in relationships. I mean, these things are all a part of life, and it doesn't mean that your life is over, or that you need to these are all parts of life, and I'm not sure if I'm really explaining this well, but I think the ability to deal with the negative or the adverse situations, and is critical to happiness and to understanding. All right, this friend group ditched me. Let me double down on the love that I do have, or the friendships that I do have. I have a specific example that I'm thinking about, where I remember someone reaching out to me 3 years, like, we didn't have a great interaction, and 3 years later they messaged me and said, at that time I was in a bad place in my life, and that's why, I was so negative towards you. And I think that's, sorry, this is not all going linearly, but I just think, I think the ability to deal with adversity is a real skill. And I think the perspective part within that is also very important. So these are kind of 6 keys that I'm thinking about. Let me know what you guys think, and hope you guys are doing well. Thanks, guys.